Hi everybody. So today I would like to review a book called When the Wind is Walking. You can kind of see the cover art there by Kassel. And sorry about that. And I guess I it was the cover art that I kind of liked, so that's why I grabbed it. And also I am a hopeless consumer. I want to buy all the things. I want to try all the things. If I had a lot more money, I would probably have a lot more things, which is probably not a good thing. So this book, an advertisement for this book came across my Facebook feed, which is why I went and grabbed it and thought, okay, I'll give it a shot, see what it says, or see how it is. And it was sort of advertised as more of a literary horror novel, and I enjoy me some literary horror. So Kassel is a Michigan-based author. He's the creator of a TV series called Our Story, and he's a former journalist and columnist for the Detroit Free Press. And apparently he's won something called the Michigan Emmy Awards. I've never heard of it. I grew up on the Michigan border too, which is another reason I kind of liked just the Michigan connection there. Okay, so I have mixed feelings about this one, namely in its representation of its black characters. It sort of comes across as like a white male fantasy, and it's kind of hard to explain. So spoilers ahead, I'm going to tell you what happens in the book, and then I'm going to tell you why it kind of made me uncomfortable. So it's a story about a guy named Tanner Ash. He's a recovering meth addict, and during the throes of his meth days, he killed a couple people and got put away and he ended up spending 8 years in prison. And so he's newly released, he's on parole, and he has to go, he needs a job, he needs a place to stay. His father, Lester, killed himself, and he spent the family fortune trying to defend Tanner, which is very easy to do. Court costs are incredibly expensive. So all that's left is this, sorry about that, I'm at work and I had to take a call. Okay, so all that's left of the family fortune is this trapper's cabin in the woods on top of a 90-acre timberland. And for some reason, nobody wants it. It's 90 acres of virgin timber, old forest growth. It should be valuable, but nobody seems to want it. So anyway, so he gets out of prison and he goes to the small town at the base of the mountains where his father's property is. And first person that he meets is a mechanic who's also a meth dealer, which apparently is quite common, in these little towns in Appalachia. And he also meets with his parole officer and with the real estate agent who is handling any potential sales of this property. And he's got a brother, but his brother doesn't talk to him. And the brother tried to sell the property as soon as their father died. But nobody seems to want it. And the real estate agent is just an absolute blackout drunk. Like, he's completely no good. So, and while he's on the steps of one of the civic buildings, he sees this black lady, and she's described in terms of like hoodoo and sex, and I don't know, it's pretty uncomfortable. So anyway, so the first night he goes up to so he takes his father's El Camino, which is one of the reasons he had to meet with this mechanic, goes up to the cabin, and he sees this little boy, and but the little boy runs off. And he tries to get some sleep, but he starts getting this horrible craving for drugs, for meth, that he hasn't had in years and years and years. And so he comes down out of the mountains again, and he goes to the store, he buys a bunch of cough syrup, and he tries to deal with it best he can, goes back up to the mountains for another night, and starts slamming cough syrup. And he sees a little boy again. And at this point, he's also starting to realize, just why his father lost his mind and what kind of horrible things are going on in this cabin. So he comes down from the mountains one more time and he runs into the real estate agent. And the real estate agent explains to him that the people that he sees are like these. It's hard to explain. He calls them anemic Africans, or I don't know if they're supposed to be like people that escaped into the mountains and they live this terrible, tortured existence. But his whole thing is that the black lady that he saw on the steps is one of them, and his assessment of her is that she is hellbound evil, but they can't deal with it, so they, quote, fuck her stupid. And then he gives the sort of, I guess it's almost like the central thesis of this horror is that evil is knowing better and doing worse. So then Tanner goes back up to the mountains and he finds this woman, and yes, he does fuck her stupid. And then he joins the mountain people, and it turns out that little boy is his father's son, but the little boy is gravely injured, and he wants to take him to the hospital, but the kid dies, and the parole officer eventually comes looking for him. The sheriff eventually comes looking for him, but he's not going back. He's not, trading in his new life with these people. It's an uncomfortable depiction of the black characters. And maybe, it's not portrayed that this is a good guy and these are bad guys. Everybody's kind of a piece of shit. But it's just every trope of the magical Negro and the highly sexualized black character. She's in 2 scenes and it's every trope in the book. And it makes it, I'm not sure if the intent here is to expose it and satirize it or to seriously portray it that way. I don't know. I'm not good enough at critical interpretation to say anything like that, but I don't know. I found it a little bit uncomfortable, and just the portrayal here. But at least the white people aren't portrayed as heroes or saviors either. They're all kind of shitbags. So the writing is good. The only problem is that, like with a lot of novellas, the content, it always kind of walks a fine line with a novella, because on the one hand, it's not long enough, there's not enough of it, or there could be enough of it that you could expand it into a novel, or you should cut it down and make it a short story. But if you don't do either of these things, then you end up with strange long passages of just yammering on and doing nothing, or a lot of short scenes that don't really add to the story but could be expanded if you wanted to make it novel length. And this is about 100 pages, and kind of it has that same problem that most novellas do, unfortunately. But overall, yeah, I'll give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't hate it. I didn't find the characters particularly likable. The writing wasn't too bad. The Tanner character is interesting because it takes an honest look at what happens when a prisoner is released from jail, and when they really have nowhere to go, and it did take an honest look at addiction and what happens with addiction. And I thought I always appreciate that kind of thing. So that is When the Wind is Walking by Chris Kassel. Checked it out because of a Facebook ad. So if you are, if you are on Facebook and you're wondering if ads work, they may not work with everybody, but they do kind of work with me. So I hope you're reading lots of great horror. Have a great day.